Yo, the autopsy report on Ashlee Jenae just leaked, and what that document is showing, it ain't suicide. Not even close. A second medical examination quietly came back with findings so damning that Tanzania has been sitting on their version of the report for days, refusing to release a single word. Brew. The receipts are pointing at strangulation. The fiancé went ghost, and an Instagram comment from 20 weeks ago already called this whole thing. And Joe McCann really thought this story was gonna hold up? Before we get into it, subscribe, don't miss it. Nah. Ashlee Robinson, better known to her 100K plus followers as Ashlee Jenae, was found unresponsive inside Villa 25 at the Zanzibar resort in Tanzania while celebrating her 31st birthday with fiancé Joseph McCann. Tanzanian police ruled it a suicide on April 13th, 2026, just days after McCann allegedly proposed on safari. McCann really thought a 5,000-mile distance would bury this story. He really thought Zanzibar was far enough. He really thought the ocean between Tanzania and the United States was a wall. But here's the thing about the internet. It doesn't recognize borders. It doesn't recognize jurisdictions. It doesn't care about a tourism economy. And right now, every single receipt is being pulled, screenshot, and archived. Now let's pull up the receipts that show why this whole thing is unraveling. Because once you see what I'm about to lay out, you'll understand why this case is not going away. Let me set the scene one more time, because the geography of this matters. Zanzibar isn't some random hotel. It's a 5-star eco-luxury resort on Kendwa Beach, the kind of property that markets itself with drone shots and infinity pools and barefoot luxury taglines. Villa 25 isn't a budget room. It's a private residence with its own pool, its own staff access, and its own walking path to the beach. This isn't a place where things just happen. This is a place where every door is a log, every guest is a check-in record, and every staff movement is tracked because that's how high-end hospitality works. Keep that in your head as we move forward, because the idea that a 31-year-old woman just vanished from observation inside a property like that on a milestone birthday with a fiancé in the room, that's not a coincidence. That's a contradiction. In her first national interview with CBS News, Ashlee's mother Yolanda Denise Endres dropped a sentence that's been echoing through every comment section since. My daughter Ashlee, she's no longer here with us, and we're trying to find out why. When I heard that, man, that's not a mother in denial. That's a mother who knows the math don't add up. That's a mother who has already done the spreadsheet in her head. Every interview clip, every press appearance, every social post she's made since, Yolanda is operating like somebody who's seen the documents and refuses to flinch. She kept going. Yolanda told CBS that McCann phoned her saying Ashlee did something to herself and that she was being taken to the hospital. But when she pressed him on when it happened, the answer was 11 hours prior. Bro said, what? 11 hours? That's not shock. That's not panic. That's not a man whose world just imploded. That's somebody who had time to think, time to call somebody, time to choose his words, time to consult, time to stage. 11 hours is enough time to fly from New York to London. 11 hours is enough time to write a screenplay. That's the dumbest flex of a timeline I've ever heard. And that one detail alone should have ended every respect his privacy defense circulating online. Then there's the medical record WPVI-TV our 6 ABC Philadelphia obtained from the first hospital that received her. That document listed her cause of death as cerebral hypoxia by strangulation and suffocation, not hanging. Two completely different clinical findings that do not match the official suicide ruling. When I read that, I had to do a double take. Then I had to do a triple take. Then I had to read it out loud to make sure I wasn't tripping. Because in forensic pathology, strangulation and hanging are not the same thing. They leave different ligature marks, different bruise patterns, different internal damage. Every medical examiner on earth knows the difference. So either the Tanzanian authorities were wrong, or the American hospital was wrong, and one of those institutions had a body in front of them with full diagnostic equipment, and the other one had a story. Her father, Harry Robinson, went on 6 ABC Action News and said it plain. There are cameras everywhere, and all the family is asking is for somebody to actually do the investigation. That's not a man grasping. That's a father who already knows what those cameras hold. A father who knows that resort hallways have CCTV. That spa entrances have CCTV. That lobby paths have CCTV. That delivery routes have CCTV. Harry isn't begging. He's telling investigators where to look. And the moment he said there are cameras everywhere, McCann's team should have felt the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. Because cameras don't lie. Cameras don't get coached. Cameras don't change their story 11 hours later. And then Cardi B, yes, Belcalis herself, broke this case wide open on April 13th when she publicly demanded answers, posting her doubts about the suicide ruling and dragging this case into the international spotlight. That's the post that changed everything. Without Cardi pulling that trigger, this story stays buried in Zanzibar. We have to be honest about that. There are dozens of cases that look exactly like this one that never crossed the algorithm. Cardi's reach turned a private grief into a global investigation in less than 48 hours. And the moment her post hit, McCann's silence stopped looking like grief and started looking like a strategy. The family's official statement, posted to Ashlee's own Instagram, said it cold. Her fiancé, Joe McCann, alleges she took her own life, but anyone who knows Ash knows she would never commit suicide. We demand answers now. That's a family saying out loud what every black woman watching this case already knew. This was a public, on-the-record, written-in permanent ink rejection of the official narrative, and they posted it on her own account, knowing every brand partner, every follower, every press outlet would see it. That's not a family in mourning quietly. That's a family calling out a man by name on the platform she built. Now that we got the quotes, let's connect the dots. That 11-hour gap, it happened during a trip that came right after proposal. A proposal McCann allegedly made just days before the death. So a man proposes, takes her on safari, then suddenly her body is in a closet with a belt around her neck inside 7 to 2 hours? That's terrible timing. Brew. Anybody with real advisors would have waited months. The proposal to tragedy window in this case is so tight it almost looks rehearsed. And the optics of we just got engaged in a moment like this? It's the oldest playbook in the relationship violence handbook. Love bomb, isolate, then escalate. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying the pattern fits a profile investigators recognize on site. Remember that mother's call? Her mother also says she actually spoke with Ashlee on April 8th, and Ashlee revealed she and McCann had argued during the trip. New context. The couple had a documented fight days before. This isn't speculation. This isn't a source close to the family. This is the mother, under her own name, saying her daughter described conflict in real time, on the phone, while still alive in Tanzania. Local Tanzanian outlets even reported the resort moved them into separate rooms before the death. Read that again. The resort moved them. That's not a guest preference. That's a hotel management decision, which means staff witnessed something serious enough to escalate. Resort staff don't separate engaged couple for fun. They do it when there's a noise complaint, a security concern, or visible conflict in a public space. McCann really thought nobody would connect those dots? That delayed call? It dropped 11 hours after something already transpired in Villa 25. And what did McCann say? That she was stable. Stable. Except by the time he made that call, hospital staff were already documenting her as deceased. Let that land for a second. He told her mother she was alive when she had already been pronounced dead. That's not miscommunication. That's not a translation issue. That's not international phone confusion. That's a deliberate misrepresentation of medical fact, which in any U.S. jurisdiction is a documented red flag in homicide investigation training. The family didn't even learn she was gone from him. They learned from the hotel itself. Imagine that. The hotel had to do the family notification because the fiancé wouldn't. His passport? Already seized. Tanzanian investigators put a hold on McCann while autopsy results were pending. New pattern. This isn't just witness cooperation. That's a man whose movements have been restricted. Travel restriction in a foreign jurisdiction is not something they do for a grieving partner. It's something they do when somebody is a person of interest. The interview he sat for at the police station happened in a jurisdiction where, per Zanzibar locals speaking openly, both resort staff and local police can be influenced by money in luxury resort environments. That's the move of a system that doesn't move clean. And that is the part most American viewers don't fully understand. Zanzibar is a semi-autonomous archipelago with its OWN police, its OWN courts, and its OWN political incentives separate from mainland Tanzania. The place this investigation is happening has its own rules. His ex-wife angle? Joseph McCann was previously married to Shay Jackson, a brand marketer with over 15 years of experience. New relational context. People in his prior orbit, people who knew him intimately, are now part of why investigators are being asked to widen this lens. His digital footprint also reveals a curated luxury lifestyle, yet photos, designer brands, business partnerships that doesn't fully match the documented financial reality investigators have started to piece together. Any smart person would have stayed off camera. McCann picked the wrong moment to disappear. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Now check this out. Nobody's talking about it the way they should. Zoom into one specific element from that hospital record. The question marks. Multiple of them. Attached to McCann's account inside the clinical notes. Forensic professionals don't doodle punctuation. Those question marks mean the bodies in front of those nurses didn't match the words coming out of his mouth. That's medical staff, in real time, flagging a story they don't believe, on paper, before any celebrity, family, or social media noise entered this thing. McCann thought hospital staff would just rubber stamp his version. That's embarrassing. In medical record keeping, punctuation like that is the closest thing to a clinician saying, "I do not trust the source of this statement," without having to write it. Lawyers read those marks. Prosecutors highlight those marks. Juries are shown those marks. Zoom into one phrase, cerebral hypoxia by strangulation and suffocation. 2 findings, not 1. Suffocation is a separate clinical finding from strangulation. That second word is a layer nobody's emphasizing. Suffocation suggests airway obstruction beyond just neck compression. If McCann had half a brain, he would have noticed how specific those clinical terms are before responding. Suffocation, in the forensic sense, can mean a soft object, a pillow, a hand, a piece of fabric, pressed over the airways separately from any ligature. Translation. The medical record is describing TWO mechanisms of asphyxia in one body. That is mathematically not consistent with a single-act self-hanging. That's a clinical sentence that, in any homicide unit in America, opens a file, not closes one. Now zoom into ONE element of that engagement, the missing ring. When her body was returned to New Jersey, her personal belongings, including the engagement ring, were not returned with her. That's not bureaucracy. Property usually travels with the body when there's nothing to hide. That single missing item is its own forensic data point. Somebody, somewhere, decided that piece needed to stay in Zanzibar. And here's the part that should make every viewer pause. Engagement rings in cases like this are sometimes evidentiary because of fingerprints, struggle damage, or DNA transfer. A missing ring isn't just emotional. It's potentially missing evidence. And whoever made that decision didn't make it by accident. Now look at one moment in McCann's behavioral pattern. Complete public silence since the day of death. No statement. No condolence post. No acknowledgement to the family. That's the move of a man on a lawyer's leash. That's the problem with McCann. Every silence is louder than the last. Compare that to literally any other public partner who has lost a fiancé in a tragedy. A public tribute is the first move within 24 hours. The absence of even a generic statement isn't grief. It's calculation. His socials, still up. His DMs, reportedly closed. His phone, according to family-adjacent sources, redirected to counsel. And finally, that ONE-specific element from Ashlee's own Instagram, a stranger comment posted approximately 20 weeks before her death, plainly warning her that the man she was building her life with would end her life. Not coded, not cryptic, direct. Whoever wrote that knew something specific. That commenter is a living witness this case has not yet questioned. McCann really didn't catch that? 20 weeks. That's almost 5 months of advance notice from somebody on the internet who already saw the ending. And the most chilling part? Ashlee likely saw that comment. She chose love anyway. Because that's what people do when they trust someone. They dismiss the noise. That's not naivety. That's loyalty being weaponized. Now let's see how the media covered this. CBS News framed this as a grieving family trying to piece together what happened, emphasizing emotion over the medical contradictions. That's a soft framing. Remember those question marks from the hospital record? CBS could have led with that. They didn't. Instead, they centered the tears, the photos, the family album, humanizing Ashlee, which is good. But in doing so, they buried the harder questions a national outlet has the resources to actually answer. That's an editorial choice. And it's a kind of choice that lets a story stay sympathetic without ever becoming dangerous to the man at the center of it. The BBC took a more international tone, framing the story around a diplomatic angle. Partner held, passport seized, autopsy pending. Their spin treats this as a foreign jurisdiction procedural. But we already broke down the 11-hour gap. The BBC's framing buries the gravity of that timeline. The BBC also did something American outlets didn't. They quoted Tanzanian police directly, which is rare and gives us actual primary source language about how local authorities are talking about the case behind closed doors. That's the part I'd watch most closely from international press going forward. TMZ, predictably, framed it as celebrity drama. Fiancé MIA, family demanding answers. Their angle isn't wrong, but its surface. Compare that to Bet, which framed this around the cultural significance, a young black woman dead overseas under disputed circumstances. Bet's framing matters because it places this case in a pattern. KGW Portland framed it locally, a Portland-tied influencer whose fiancé stays silent. And that local framing matters too, because it pulls in regional reporters who can pressure city, state, and federal officials with constituent calls. Now, some McCann defenders are saying the suicide ruling stands until contradicted, but those are the same people ignoring two separate medical records that already contradict it. McCann supporters are reaching trying to defend a story the receipts already buried. The media trying to soften this for him? The records don't lie. The autopsy contradictions don't lie. The 11-hour gap doesn't lie. The hospital question marks don't lie. The missing engagement ring doesn't lie. The separated rooms don't lie. The seized passport doesn't lie. The 20-week-old Instagram comment doesn't lie. When every independent piece of evidence is pointing the same direction, the burden flips. It's no longer prove it wasn't suicide. It's prove it was. But here's what nobody is saying. Mainstream coverage wants you to believe this is a tragedy lost in the cracks of international jurisdiction, a sad story where two governments couldn't quite cooperate. Here's what they won't tell you. This case isn't falling through the cracks. It's being pushed through them. There's a difference. A crack is an accident. A push is a choice. And every actor in this system, from the resort to the local police to the foreign jurisdiction to the silent fiancé, has a financial or legal incentive to keep this case in the tragic accident overseas category instead of the international homicide investigation category. This is a Shankwella Robinson playbook, run again. Different country, different victim, same script. In October 2022, Shankwella traveled to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, and was dead within hours. Mexican authorities ruled it a spinal cord injury. Years later, nobody charged on American soil. Now we're watching Tanzania run the same offense against the Robinson family. The pattern isn't subtle. It's a historical pattern of black women dying abroad while host countries quietly run out the clock. We've seen this before. McCann is on the losing side of history if this case keeps getting attention. And the receipts on Shankwella's case are still being pulled years later, meaning the internet's memory on cases like this is now longer than the legal statute of limitations in most jurisdictions. Here's the angle nobody on cable news will say out loud. Tanzania depends on tourism. Zanzibar markets itself to Americans. The economic pressure to protect the resort and its guests over foreign victims' family is built into the system. That's not conspiracy, that's structural. McCann's defense isn't a person. It's a country's tourism budget. Tourism contributes roughly 17% of Tanzania's GDP, with Zanzibar being one of the most internationally marketed destinations on the continent. Now imagine the conversation in a government office when a luxury resort, an international guest, and a homicide allegation hit the same news cycle. You don't need a tinfoil hat to predict the outcome. You just need a calculator. And the industry of luxury international travel? It's a puppet being pulled by reputation management firms whose entire job is to make stories like this disappear. The system needs this case to disappear quietly, and McCann is giving them exactly the silence they want. Remember that hospital record with the question marks? Here's the real reason those marks were drawn. Those weren't doctors flagging skepticism for the family. They were flagging it for themselves, because medical professionals in Tanzania know exactly how a Zanzibari investigation can swallow a body and a story. They wrote those question marks as insurance, knowing the official ruling might never reflect what they saw. That's what real witnesses do when they know the system around them isn't safe. McCann thought hospital staff were on his side. They weren't. They were quietly building a paper trail. A paper trail that, under U.S. subpoena power, if it ever gets pulled, becomes evidence. Remember that 20-week-old Instagram comment? Here's the deeper layer. That commenter wasn't some random troll. The specificity of the warning suggests proximity. Somebody who had either dated McCann, worked near him, or watched a similar pattern up close. McCann's whole persona, the financially stable fiancé, the safari proposer, the curated life, is manufactured. Somebody in his real orbit saw the cracks 4.5 months before the world did. McCann is playing checkers while the internet is playing chess. And here's the twist. Internet sleuth communities have already begun aggregating that commenter's account history, post timing, and geographic clues to narrow down identity. That's not vigilantism. That's open source intelligence. And if that commenter is who internet investigators think it is, McCann is in a deeper hole than even his lawyers realize. And here's a cultural truth. This case represents a generational shift. Black women on social media, the same demographic that wouldn't let Shanquella's name die, refuse to let Ashlee's story be buried. McCann represents the OLD assumption that international distance equals safety. The culture is done with that assumption. He's watching the internet move past every legal and PR firewall his team can put up, and there's nothing he can do about it. Every silence makes him look guiltier. Every day of no comment reads as confession. The TikTok edits alone have racked up tens of millions of views in less than 2 weeks, and every single one of them keeps a name and his name in the same frame. That's not media coverage. That's a cultural verdict in real time. The forbidden truth? This isn't a mystery. It's a documented pattern executed in plain sight, protected by the gap between two legal systems, and only exposed because black women refuse to scroll past. And that's the truth they won't tell you. Because telling that truth means admitting that the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. So what happens next? Mark my words. When Tanzania is finally forced to release that autopsy, the language is going to be vague. They're going to use words like consistent with instead of confirmed. When that happens, McCann is going to look desperate trying to hide behind ambiguity that already collapsed under 2 American medical reports. He's going to stay silent because his lawyers are going to tell him to. And that silence is going to hurt him more than any diss track ever could. The U.S. State Department will quietly pressure Tanzania to formalize charges or release jurisdiction. McCann is going to find out that no comment doesn't survive the internet age. Watch for the State Department Bureau of Consular Affairs to be the first official U.S. body to make a public-facing move. That's how this kind of pressure cascade always begins. Now, if the FBI gets formally pulled in, and given Cardi B.S. National Reach plus Harry Robinson's continued D.C. presence, that's coming. McCann is not ready for what U.S. federal investigators do with phone records, financial movements, and digital forensics that Zanzibar didn't have the infrastructure to pull. We saw what federal pressure eventually did to the Cabo 6 case in terms of public exposure. McCann doesn't stand a chance if that lens lands on him. Watch for an indictment conversation to start trending within weeks if that second autopsy gets formally confirmed through named outlets. If McCann thought Tanzania was the worst-case venue, wait till he finds out what an American federal grand jury can do with his bank records. Federal grand juries don't need a victim's body. They don't need a confession. They need a paper trail. And there's already a paper trail being assembled in real time across at least 4 U.S. states. Looking at the bigger picture, this case is going to become a turning point for how American influencers travel internationally. Brands are going to start writing safety clauses into international shoot contracts. Insurance companies are going to reprice luxury safari packages. Zanzibar's bookings are going to crater. Tanzania's tourism industry is going to take a reputational hit that lasts years. And 5 years from now, when people search black women dying abroad, Ashlee Jenae's name is going to sit right next to Shanquella's as a case that finally forced the State Department to take these deaths seriously. McCann's legacy? He's going to be the cautionary tale every investigator references in the next case like this. He's watching the culture move on without him while permanently attached to her name in every search result. There's nothing he can do about that. The Wikipedia entry is going to outlive him. The TikToks are going to outlive him. The hashtag is going to outlive him. The Instagram commenter is going to be identified. Public pressure will force that. When that happens, prosecutors get a witness whose pre-event warning becomes Exhibit A in any future proceeding. And once that witness goes on the record, whether on camera, on a podcast, or under subpoena, the stories shift from tragic incident overseas to documented warning ignored. That single shift in narrative is the difference between a closed case and a federal indictment. Whatever happens, McKenna already lost. He lost the day Cardi posted. He lost the day the family posted on Ashlee's own account. He lost the day WPVI pulled their hospital record. He lost the day the missing ring became a headline. He lost the day a stranger's comment from 20 weeks ago started trending. He lost the day black women on social media decided this name would not be forgotten. The only question now is when the rest of the system catches up to what the internet has already concluded. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss when we expose what everyone else is too scared to say.